All right. Welcome to the second episode of my extended review series where we talk about new stuff, old stuff, and other stuff. This time around, we're talking about albums from K Jesus Peace, Black Thought, Jazz is Dead, Angel Back Dawid. We've got some old stuff with Frank Ocean, Channel Orange, Kendrick Lamar's Mr. Morale, and the Big Steppers, and some Alice Coltrane as well. Let's get into it. So everything about this release had me hyped for the definitive summer 2023 album, that pastel 90s artwork giving maximum cocktails before midday kind of vibes, plus the promise of Kaytranada's funky house production. And as much as I'm not familiar with Amine, it's clear from just a passing listen to his work that his style is a perfect match for the music that we'd surely get on this record. But as it happens, what we get is all right. But it really surprised me how relatively low key and kind of dark the production is, considering all of the ingredients going into it. To me, the highlights of the album are the songs that most closely resemble the record I've been expecting, but even these have some weird melancholy hanging over them. The Pharrell featuring Forever has a cool Afrobeat foundation. I has a really nice Snoop feature, and Let's Talk About It gives us a shot of that summer vibe that with the sweetly sung refrain, but absolutely all of them feel subdued in a minor key way. Rebuke provides us a breezy guitar sample beat that feels like the closing track off the album I was expecting and that never was. And Amino definitely flows well across all of the beats here, but his Lothario lyrics kind of grate on me after a while. And I know that's kind of par for the course for any rapper under the age of 30. Um, it is cool to hear K Tronada give us his version of a trap beat on West Side, and Master P has nice usage of twisted and reversed choir vocals, with some decent lyrics this time from Amine and feature Big Sean. However, the chorus on that track is somewhat lacking. I feel like this album might just be a victim of big or misplaced expectations, and maybe over time I'll enjoy it a little bit more. But right now, this just feels okay when I think all of the components could have led to something classic. So for me, this is a 5 out of 10. Jesus Peace are a metalcore band from Philadelphia, and So Unknown is their second album after 2018's Only Self. The sheer brutal attack of these low and chugging riffs mixed with Aaron Hurd's deep guttural growling vocals can have the music embody a kind of death metal feel at points, and that kind of makes sense as that is actually the genre the members aspired towards when they originally formed. But there's a ferocity and immediacy to tracks like Tunnel Vision or An Offering to the Night that keeps Jesus Peace in orbit of the hardcore slash metalcore genre. On this album, the band ride the line between stuttering chugs with squealing breaks and just locking into a groove that you can screw your face up at, like the midsection of Gates of Horn. Production wise, I do find it pretty fatiguing, as with most albums in the genre, as there just aren't many change ups in tonality um, on any of the instruments. But it almost seems silly to mention it, as holding your ears prisoner for 30 minutes is pretty much the point, I would imagine. Not for the faint of heart, but if you like your metal on the brutal side, you've got to check this out. For me, it's a 7 out of 10. Off the heels of the excellent Cheat Codes, a collaborative album with Danger Mouse released last year, Black Thought is back, this time backed by the El Michel's Affair, a soul band with a cinematic aesthetic and a specialism in delivering live instrumentals ripe for an old school lyrical master like Thought to jump on. Like Cheat Code's Glorious Game is a record that I think you'll outright love without any convincing if you're a fan of old school hip hop. When you combine the rap prowess of Black Thought, co-founder of The Roots, with a live band known for their full album cover of 36 Chambers, for a certain type of rap fan you don't really need to say any more. Given his background in The Roots, it's really no wonder why Black Thought sounds so comfortable delivering his trademark sophisticated bars against the backdrop of a live band, but it's no less impressive when you hear him actually match the changing tempo of a track like The Weather in the midst of a verse without barely taking a breath. Lyrically, the album sees Thought reflecting on growing up in Philadelphia, while often comparing and contrasting the past against today. Honestly, it doesn't really deliver anything too profound or thought provoking, but with an album where there is just so much proficiency on display, both vocally and musically, it kind of doesn't matter. It's still a thoroughly enjoyable listen from start to finish. I would give it a 7 out of 10. Lonnie Liston Smith is a renowned jazz musician, most notably working with Pharoah Sanders and Miles Davis before forming his own acclaimed group, the Cosmic Echoes. Smith is the featured artist on the latest Jazz It's Dead release, although to me it's a slight disappointment that he is required to share the spotlight for half the record with guesting vocalist Lauren Oden. This is nothing against Oden, who has an unquestionably powerful voice, but I've gone on record before with my general lack of enjoyment of the often meandering and drawn out vocals we hear in jazz. And sadly, the majority of songs, I think it's about 4 out of the 9, indulge in this. The exception to this is A New Spring, in which vocals are used simply as another instrumental tool, and this works really well, the high choral notes imbuing the track with a sense of wonder. The instrumental tracks we have here are sensational. Kaleidoscope is one of my favourites, and a tune where Liston Smith's subtle but virtuosic approach to the keys really shines. Would have loved more of these and less of the vocal tracks, so for me, this album on the whole is a 5 out of 10. Angel Bat Dawid is a multi-instrumentalist jazz composer who in 2019 released one of the most fantastic modern jazz albums in The Oracle. This record featured not only beautiful playing from Dawid, but also elements of avant-garde production and arrangement with vocal manipulations, effects, and improvisations. Requiem for Jazz feels less a slightly avant-garde jazz album and more a full-scale abstract opera. It deals with incredibly heavy themes around the Black experience relative to the impact of jazz on the world and its appreciation by society. The song titles alone are profound and give you pause for thought. I couldn't respect this artistic expression any more than I do. I do have to say, though, that as a listening experience, it's very hard going and not something I feel like I'm really going to come back to. There are really nice musical segues and passages, but these are short lived and often become tracks of intense, kind of like opera like singing. It's just not to my taste. But as a piece of art in and of itself, it is poignant and powerful. I feel like ratings for this type of thing are kind of, as with any piece of art, really, are pointless. If I had to rate it just in terms of listenability and my likelihood to come back to it, it would be like a 3. But as I say, this is, huge respect for this incredible piece of work. There's some real power and meaning to it. It's one for me to appreciate rather than to enjoy, if that makes sense. A Kendrick album always feels like an event and something that needs to be absorbed slowly in order to reflect the time and effort that goes into his work. The dichotomy that Lamar is widely lauded as one of the biggest stars in rap, yet often releases music that challenges, intellectualizes rather than slaps, is amusing. Often I get the sense that people feel like they must listen, yet are left disappointed when there isn't necessarily a party starter in the mix. Having the right expectation going in for a first listen for me, I found helpful when this album came out last year. I was aware of the extensive runtime and heavy themes, but was surprised that even on a first pass of Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, I did actually come across a number of engaging beat switches and hooks, drawing me in for subsequent listens beyond just the need to hear the words of one of modern hip hop's most thought provoking lyricists. The album feels long, possibly too long, but on a track by track level, save for some of the interludes and We Cry Together, which does only need one playthrough, I'd be pushed to drop any songs. Each of them provide a unique look into the psyche and mental state of a man reckoning with past and current behaviours, his place in the world, and how to push forward. All of these building to a conclusion that feels earned and, I think, uplifting. Mother I Sober is truly heart-wrenching and powerful, an exploration of abuse and trauma across generations, with Lamar ultimately exercising these demons in the closing moments of the track, which leads us to the finale of Mirror, in which we hear the repeated mantra of I choose me, I'm sorry. While this could be seen as a selfish declaration here, it's used to highlight that in order for Lamar to break the cycle of both familial trauma and public expectations, which has led to the destructive behaviour, he must look inward. He must choose himself over martyrdom. The ripple effect he can make as a better father, husband, and son outweigh that of trying to be all things to all people, which is all consuming, but also convenient in its ability to create a facade that hides him from the pain and leads to the spiral of destructive excesses in which we found him at the start of the record. I think this is another classic in his discography. I'd give it a 9 out of 10 easy. Channel Orange is the major label debut of Frank Ocean. Released in 2012, it represented an artist already operating at the absolute pinnacle of the R&B genre within the boundaries that had already been established by the greats and contemporaries of the time. Where many new artists take a few albums to get up to speed, Frank leapfrogged the competition, reached the top of the mountain in one release, and clearly indicated that whatever came next would be something new for him and new for the genre. And we all know that that was exactly what we got with 2015's Blonde. The record opens beautifully with the classic Thinking About You, announcing Ocean's unbelievable falsetto to a mainstream audience within the first minute. The undeniable tracks are scattered throughout Channel Orange, but I will say in a statement that may be offensive to some, the record isn't above criticism. Over 10 years later, I think there's a couple of tracks here that don't work that well. Sierra Leone is kind of all over the place, and as a song, I don't think it fully coheres into an amazing song despite all of the great ingredients found throughout the record being present. And as iconic as Pyramids is, the John Mayer guitar solo at the end never really sits right with me. I'll be in this very small minority, but on this particular track, the guitar tone feels a little tacky. I think they could have been more tasteful with that. That being said, these are minor critiques of an album that is undeniably amazing. Even the oddities on the album, like Fertilizer and White, comfortably stand shoulder to shoulder with like titans of songwriting like Lost and Bad Religion. There's production choices like the clipped drum samples on Monks, which are kind of weird, but they just seem to absolutely work under the magic of Orange. I would say this is a solid 9 out of 10. As with many jazz albums that I review, I always seem to first become captivated by the supporting players and instruments on the record prior to honing in on the artist in question. In this case, the double bass playing of Cecil McBee absolutely blew me away on the first few listens, dropping lines that are just impeccably cool and timeless. The bass is fantastically throughout, but most notably on the title track and Stopover Bombay. Ferry Sanders provides incredible improvisational sax throughout the record as well. His work on the record appears to be the connector between American jazz improvisation and the exploration into Indian classical that Alice Coltrane was so keen to explore on this record. The record falls under the category of spiritual jazz and definitely feels experimental in nature, but is also really enjoyable despite those genre labels that normally feel quite intimidating. Alice Coltrane plays both harp and piano across the record, and without having listened to much of her work prior, it's clear why she's noted as such an important figure in jazz music in general. Coltrane's harp can both lead and follow, and due to the elegant nature of the instrument, the harp is often leading, even when sonically it kind of sits behind the other more prominent elements like the sax or bass. The playing on Shiva Loka begins by conjuring a dreamy, calming atmosphere, but following the harp over the course of the track, you can hear Coltrane push back against the other instruments with almost dissonant chordal stabs and intense riffing. The sound even like clips at certain points in the recording. But then it pulls back to a more dreamlike atmosphere in the piece's closing moments. It's a beautiful record that rewards repeated listens. It's absolutely epic in the 37 minutes of total runtime we get, transporting you to other worlds before most albums can even get you out the front door. This is a classic. It's a 10 out of 10. Okay, so that's pretty much it for like new stuff. But I've got some other things happening on my channels that you should check out. I've done a deep dive on Foo Fighters, who have announced their latest drummer in the form of Josh Freese. So I've got a video on the weird and wild discography of him. There's what to listen to if videos coming out. I'm also going to be doing a video on the hidden Queens of the Stone Age albums. So check those out. Let me know what you think of the reviews in here, and yeah, hopefully see you next time. Cheers.